Maybe you have an idea for a film bouncing around in your head. Maybe you told someone your idea at a party and they said, cool, I'm going to get another drink, and you thought, wow, I've really got something here. Well, how do you turn this source of artistic genius into a reality? Well, you need to develop it, flesh it out, expand on it. I can almost guarantee you, if you haven't written the script yet and you haven't created any visual material, your idea is undercooked. And undercooked food doesn't make it to the table. God, it's raw! You're gonna get sick! No! So today we're talking about how to make your vague idea into something concrete. We're talking scripts, storyboards, previs, lookbooks, pitch decks. By the way, some of the stuff I cover kind of falls under pre-production because the stages sometimes kind of cross over. But just so you're aware, this is going to go in order of basic to bulletproof, so if you're not hearing anything new, just skip to a later section. Or watch the whole thing. I'm not your dad. Do whatever you want. Dad! Okay, so how do you start? Well, it all starts with your idea. Now, you might cut me off here and say, whoa, who said I have an idea? Where do I get that? To which I would say, first off, don't interrupt. And secondly, jackass, get out and experience some shit. Why are you watching this video? Go read that chewed up book you carry around and pretend to make progress on. Perform an ayahuasca ceremony on a long distance flight with carry-on luggage full of bullet ants.
I'm serious. Fuck a chicken if that's what it takes. Watch a chicken fucking a horse. What? You think the guys who invented Google sat around watching Trumpton?
Find some seed of a film idea that you want to make a reality and then come back here.
See you later.
Okay, so you have your idea. What you'll quickly realize when you try to put your idea to paper is that you don't have enough material for a film. Or the idea you've been fantasizing about is actually just a few interesting moments or shots, but not really a story. Now, some of you haven't even taken this step because you're afraid to be faced with this. The sour taste of realizing you're not a creative genius and your great idea is actually banal and inadequate. Well, if you want to actually make something, you better get used to this feeling because we're going to come across it again. Quite regularly, actually. Now, maybe you already want to throw the towel in and give up.
It's hopeless, Figaro.
Like one of my teachers always said when things got hard, it's time to squeeze your little hands together and make thinking noises. That wasn't primary school, by the way, we were like 17. So there's a few ways you can go about expanding your idea. The classic approach is a script or screenplay. You can write out your story in standard screenplay format, and any film professional who gets your script will be able to follow it because that's the industry standard and it'll probably be expected of you. You might want to make an outline in which you summarize the key points of the story before you dive into writing so that you have kind of a rough plan and you don't get lost in the process. If this all sounds completely new to you, by the way, you can go watch a video I did on screenwriting that covers the basics, and it's a lot more relaxed than this.
I'm calm!
Now back to scripts. You might realize all these cool audio-visual ideas you have in your head actually seem really uninteresting when written out on paper. Or you decide, if this is an audio-visual medium, why am I writing anything in the first place? Well, another thing you could do is make a storyboard. This is where you draw the individual shots for the scenes in your film. Now, there's a reason people usually have a script and a storyboard.
For example, I do not use a storyboard. I think it's an instrument of the cowards.
Okay, there's a reason some people do. The script covers what happens and what's said. The storyboard covers what's seen on screen in the individual shots. The value of a storyboard is that you can already have the edit in mind. You can draw the shots and mentally cut them together and watch your film, figuratively speaking. By the way, for storyboarding, if you're not good at drawing, you can also just take your phone and ask a friend to step in and take some pictures of roughly the composition and positioning you want. You can also use 3D software or animate the scenes. However you decide to do it, what you're doing is called previsualization or previs. This is where you use some kind of visual method to illustrate how you want the shots to look. With 3D tools, it's gotten to the point where cinematographers can even test realistic lighting setups in order to virtually pre-light a scene. You can tweak the tiniest details. They have all sorts of 3D models for buildings and set pieces. It's amazing. But you don't have to know all that, of course. It's just, the point is you've got options. So now you realized you didn't fully think through what the actors would say and do, or at least not in enough detail, and you didn't think about the fact that all this needs to be captured by a camera. Well, shit. Welcome to storytelling. You needed to somehow shape your idea into something that makes sense as a cohesive film. Keep in mind, I'm not saying you have to follow some kind of arc or act structure, which to an extent is not even really possible in a short film. Your scenes and your ideas need to somehow fit together in a coherent way. Or if you're going for a more experimental approach, in my opinion, there should at least be some kind of consistency, even if it's just the style or mood. You could even make it consistently inconsistent, but there's still that thread running through the film. The point is, you're creating a singular piece of work. So what is the core of this piece? What ties these scenes and ideas together? Why are you making it? Is there something more to it beyond just churning out another film? If you can answer these questions, it'll be much easier to start filling in the gaps in your film, and it'll be easier to remove scenes that aren't relevant. So if you have an idea for a really cool dream sequence, for example, great. But where do we go from there? Or how did we get there? What is the reality that the dreamer wakes up to? Why is this dream relevant to them? I mean, maybe the whole film takes place inside of a dream. Check out Waking Life, a Richard Linklater film. But why are we in this dream world, and what do you do with it? You're more free, things don't have to be as clear, but you probably want your audience still to have something to hold on to. I mean, even in David Lynch's films, you have some really bizarre sequences, but there's usually something you can follow and some kind of a thread running through the film. Again, I'm not saying there has to be, there are no rules here, but try to think about expanding your idea like this. Try to tease it apart in different directions by asking questions if you're stuck. I would say the why questions are usually the hardest to answer and the most important to understand. As an audience member, if I'm watching a film and I'm irritated, it's usually because I'm asking myself, why are you showing me this?
You people have wasted my time. You've wasted the taxpayers' time.
Okay, so now hopefully you have some ingredients to cook with, and you've ideally decided to lay this idea out clearly in the form of a script and storyboard. You might be thinking, let's send this to people, let's get this show on the road, but whoa, slow down. You're missing some pretty crucial things. I mean, what are the characters dressed like? What's the visual style of the film? Have you thought about color palettes yet? What about the sound design? Oof, buddy. Looks like there's a lot you haven't thought about yet. It's going to be difficult if the first time you start thinking about production design is when you first meet your production designer. This is where you might want to consider making a lookbook. Now, a lot of people think of different things when you say lookbook. It's also tricky because the term is used in other industries like fashion and business. But basically, in film, this is generally a document in a kind of presentation format that aims to capture the look and feel of the film. So you might include references to lighting and compositions you like, examples of costume or casting choices for specific characters. This is a way for you to communicate your ideas to your team, so that your costume designer knows roughly what costumes you want, and so on. It doesn't have to be set in stone, but it's at least a blueprint for further conversations. So what is generally included? You have basic info about the film, like title, logline, synopsis, character descriptions, filmmaker and team bios. And then you have visual references for things like composition, lighting, colors, mood, locations. You might also include department-specific materials, so visual references for costumes, props, set design, and so on. Some people also include information about cameras, lenses, and that crossover between technical and creative choices. One thing I find a lot of people tend to neglect, though, is post-production. I'd like to include a bit about editing style, color grading, sound design, and the soundtrack. The point is, you shouldn't just be thinking about these things when it comes to the time that they're needed. The more you think about your project as a whole, the more cohesive it'll be at the end. Having a clear plan doesn't mean you can't improvise, but it does mean you won't be standing there scratching your head when someone asks you what color the wallpaper should be for scene 6. You can't think of everything, but try to cover as much as you can. Now, some people might also include their goals for the distribution of the film at the end. I personally think this falls more under the purview of a pitch deck. A lookbook is a tool for a director to communicate their artistic vision for a film, and a pitch deck is more a tool for a producer to communicate a film's potential and goals in order to entice financiers or other production companies. It'll include some of the same information as the lookbook, like the basic info about the film and maybe some nice visual references, but it's not gonna detail nuances of a specific set of vintage lenses you want to use because of how smooth the roll-off is in the highlights. Now, it might include more relevant information like budget requirements, financing structures, target audiences, distribution avenues, and revenue streams, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's really more something for the producer industry side of getting a feature film off the ground. And honestly, I don't know enough about it, but it's good to know. So to recap, get a hold of your idea, expand on it by writing a script and creating a storyboard, then prepare a lookbook with important information so that your collaborators can understand what your vision is. The aim of these steps is to make sure that the idea is as clear and cohesive as possible so that pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution go as smoothly as possible. Now get the fuck out of here and make your film.
Oh!